Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I stood outside my childhood home at midnight in a thunderstorm soaked to the bone, watching my dad's silhouette through the window as he deadbolted the front door. Lightning illuminated the familiar porch where I used to sit with my golden retriever Rex, now deceased for 3 years. 30 minutes ago, I was sitting at our family dinner table celebrating my college acceptance letter. Now I was homeless because my younger brother Derek claimed I stole $3,000 from our dad's business-safe money that was actually taken to pay Derek's gambling debts. My entire world shattered in one evening, based on a calculated lie. Earlier that evening, I had arrived home from my part-time job at the campus bookstore, my backpack heavy with textbooks, and my heart light with excitement. The acceptance letter from State University felt like a golden ticket in my jacket pocket, and I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. Our modest 2-story house on Maple Street smelled of Mom's famous meatloaf, and I could hear the familiar sounds of dinner preparation echoing from the kitchen. My dad. Gary owned Henderson Automotive, a small repair shop that had been his life's work for 22 years. He was a sturdy man with calloused hands and grease permanently embedded under his fingernails, someone who believed in hard work and honest living. My mom, Carol, worked as a registered nurse at County General Hospital, often pulling double shifts to help with our family expenses. She had this gentle way of making everyone feel heard and valued, even after her longest days. My 17-year-old brother Derek sat at our dining room table nervously fidgeting with his smartphone. His sandy brown hair hung over his eyes, and his leg bounced restlessly under the table. Something about his demeanor seemed off that evening, but I attributed it to typical teenage anxiety about upcoming final exams. Herbert, perfect timing. Dad called out as he emerged from the kitchen carrying a steaming casserole dish. Your mother's working late again, but she left us enough food for an army. I pulled out the acceptance letter, my hands trembling slightly with excitement. Dad, I have incredible news. State University accepted me into their business program, and there's a possibility of scholarship money if I interview well next month. Derek's phone slipped from his hands and clattered onto the hardwood floor. His face drained of color, and he quickly bent to retrieve it, avoiding eye contact with anyone at the table. Dad's face broke into a proud grin. Son, that's outstanding. Your hard work is finally paying off. We'll have to celebrate properly once your mother gets home from her shift. We sat down to eat, and I noticed Derek pushing food around his plate without actually consuming anything. His usual teenage appetite had vanished, replaced by a nervous energy that made my stomach clench with unspoken worry. Halfway through dinner, Dad's expression suddenly darkened. He set down his fork with deliberate precision and looked directly at me. Herbert, I need to ask you something serious. Did you go near my office at the shop yesterday? The question caught me completely off guard. Your office? No, Dad. I was at the bookstore all day, then came straight home. Why? Derek cleared his throat and spoke for the first time that evening. Actually, I saw Herbert near the shop office yesterday around 3 o'clock. I was walking home from baseball practice and noticed him coming out of the back entrance. My blood ran cold. Derek, that's impossible. I was in class until 4, then worked until closing time at 8. Professor Martinez can verify my attendance. Dad's jaw tightened. Someone broke into my safe sometime yesterday afternoon. $3,000 in cash receipts is missing. The safe wasn't damaged, which means whoever took it knew the combination. Derek leaned forward, his voice gaining confidence. I remember thinking it was weird seeing Herbert there because he never visits the shop during weekday afternoons. He was carrying that blue backpack he always uses, and it looked heavier than normal. Derek, you're lying. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I wasn't anywhere near Dad's shop yesterday. Why would you say that? Dad held up his hand for silence. Derek, are you absolutely certain about what you saw? 100% certain. I even texted my friend Brandon about it because I wondered why Herbert was there when he should have been at work. Derek pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. Look, here's the text I sent yesterday at 3:15. My heart pounded as I watched Dad read Derek's phone screen. The timestamp looked genuine, and Derek's story contained specific details that made it sound credible. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had never been near the automotive shop yesterday afternoon. Derek continued building his case. Also, remember last month when Herbert asked you about the safe combination? He said he was curious about how the old mechanical locks worked. I thought it was innocent at the time, but now, I asked about that because I was helping with a school project about traditional security methods versus modern digital systems. I protested. Professor Williams assigned us to research different types of locks and safes. Dad studied both of our faces carefully. Derek maintained steady eye contact while I felt my own confidence wavering under the weight of mounting circumstantial evidence. How could my own brother fabricate such an elaborate lie? Herbert, I need you to be completely honest with me, Dad said slowly. Are you in any kind of financial trouble? Student loans, credit cards, anything that might have pressured you into making a desperate decision? Dad, I swear on Rex's memory that I didn't take that money. I've never stolen anything in my life. You raised me better than that. Derek shifted uncomfortably at the mention of our deceased dog, but quickly regained his composure. I hate saying this about my own brother, but the evidence is pretty clear. He had access to the combination he was seen at the location, and he's been stressed about college expenses lately. The room fell silent, except for the steady tick of our grandmother's antique clock. Dad rubbed his temples, a gesture I recognized from childhood whenever he faced difficult decisions. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first raindrops began pattering against our kitchen window. Herbert, I'm going to give you one chance to tell the truth and return the money. If you admit what you did and make it right, we can work through this as a family. I can't return money I never took. My voice cracked with frustration and growing panic. Dad, please believe me. I don't know why Derek is saying these things, but I'm innocent. Derek produced a final piece of evidence from his backpack, one of my college textbooks with my name written inside the front cover. I found this on the floor near Dad's safe this morning when I stopped by to pick up my baseball glove. I was going to return it to Herbert, but then Dad discovered the missing money. The book was definitely mine advanced accounting principles, which I had been searching for all week. Seeing it emerge from Derek's bag felt like a physical blow to my chest. How had it gotten to Dad's office when I distinctly remembered leaving it in my dorm room? Dad picked up the textbook and examined my handwriting on the inside cover. His face hardened with disappointment and what looked suspiciously like disgust. This is very damaging evidence, Herbert. How do you explain your textbook being in my office if you weren't there? I have no idea, Derek. How did you really get that book? Did you take it from my room? I told you exactly where I found it, Derek replied with convincing indignation. I can't believe you're trying to blame me for your own criminal behavior. The climactic twist hit me like lightning. Derek had been planning this accusation for weeks, gathering information and creating false evidence. He had systematically planted my textbook near the safe and taken photos. As I looked at my brother's face, I realized he wasn't just lying, he was executing a carefully orchestrated deception. But what I didn't know yet was that Derek had been secretly gambling online, accumulating massive debts to dangerous people who had been threatening him with violence. My scholarship money and college plans made me the perfect scapegoat for his desperation. Dad's explosion of rage shook the entire house. His face turned crimson red, and veins bulged in his forehead as he slammed his fist on the dining room table, causing our water glasses to jump and spill across the wooden surface. 20 years I've spent building my reputation in this community, he shouted. 20 years of honest work, fair dealing, and treating customers like family. And my own son destroys it all by stealing from me like some common criminal. I had never seen my father this angry before. Growing up, Dad had always been firm, but controlled the type of man who believed actions spoke louder than words. Now, he paced around our living room like a caged animal, his work boots leaving muddy prints on Mom's carefully maintained carpet. "Dad, please calm down and listen to me," I pleaded. "I understand you're upset about the missing money, but I'm telling you the absolute truth. I didn't take it. Don't you dare tell me to calm down." He wheeled around and pointed an accusatory finger at my chest. "I trusted you with information about my business. I bragged to my customers about my responsible older son who was heading to college. I even considered offering you a partnership someday." Derek sat quietly in the corner, his face a perfect mask of concerned innocence. Occasionally, he would nod sadly when Dad made particularly harsh accusations against me playing the role of the disappointed younger brother flawlessly. The evidence doesn't lie. "Herbert," Dad continued, "your textbook at the scene Derek's eyewitness testimony, your knowledge of the safe combination, and your recent stress about college finances. What am I supposed to think? You're supposed to think about who I am as a person." I shot back, my own anger finally surfacing. "When have I ever given you reason to doubt my character? When have I ever lied to you or stolen anything, even as a small child?" Dad paused for a moment, and I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his features. But Derek quickly jumped in with additional details that strengthened his fabricated story. "I also remember seeing Herbert writing down numbers on a piece of paper a few weeks ago," Derek said quietly. "When I asked him about it, he said it was homework, but now I'm wondering if he was trying to memorize the safe combination. This was another complete fabrication, but it sounded plausible enough to reignite Dad's fury. The truth was that I had been calculating my projected college expenses, trying to figure out how much money I would need for textbooks and dormitory costs. "That's it," Dad declared. "I want you to empty your pockets, open your backpack, and show me your bank statements. If you're innocent, you won't mind proving it." I complied immediately, desperate to demonstrate my honesty. My pockets contained only a few dollars in cash, my student ID card, and some loose change. My backpack held textbooks, notebooks, and assignment papers. My bank statements showed a modest balance of $437 accumulated from months of part-time work. "This doesn't prove anything," Derek interjected. "He could have hidden the money somewhere else or already spent it." Dad examined my bank records with the scrutiny of an FBI investigator. "Your account balance is consistent with your bookstore wages, but that doesn't mean you haven't stashed the stolen money elsewhere. Where would I hide $3,000? I asked desperately. "Search my room, search my car, call the bookstore, and verify my work schedule. Do whatever it takes to prove my innocence." "I don't have time for games, Herbert. I need that money back immediately to cover payroll and supplier payments. My business reputation depends on meeting my financial obligations." The rain outside had intensified, drumming against our windows with increasing urgency. Lightning flashed across our living room, briefly illuminating the family photographs that lined our mantelpiece, images of happier times when our family felt unbreakable. "Dad, I can't return money I never stole," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "Please don't let Derek's lies destroy our relationship." "Enough," Dad's voice boomed through the house. "I've heard enough excuses and denials. You have exactly 15 minutes to pack your belongings and get out of this house. You're not welcome here until you return my money and apologize for your theft." The words hit me like a physical assault. "You're kicking me out." "Your own son. You made your choice when you decided to steal from your family," Dad replied coldly. "I won't harbor a thief under my roof, regardless of blood relation." Derek's face showed what appeared to be genuine distress at this development. "Dad, maybe that's too harsh. Herbert is still my brother. Don't defend him, Derek. At least one of my sons has integrity and moral courage. Herbert chose to betray our trust, and now he gets to face the consequences of that decision." I looked around our family home, memorizing details I might never see again: the kitchen where Mom had taught me to cook scrambled eggs, the staircase where Derek and I used to slide down the banister despite parental warnings, the fireplace where we opened Christmas presents every December morning. Can I at least call Mom and explain my side of the story? "Your mother is working a double shift to save money for your college education," Dad said bitterly. "Don't you think you've caused her enough heartache for one day?" I trudged upstairs to my childhood bedroom, my legs feeling like they were made of concrete. Every step seemed to echo with the finality of this moment. Derek followed me silently, watching as I grabbed clothes, textbooks, and a few personal items. "Why are you doing this to me?" I whispered to him when Dad was out of earshot. Derek looked genuinely pained, but his voice remained steady. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just telling the truth about what I saw." As I packed my belongings into a large duffel bag and my school backpack, I noticed Derek quietly observing which items I took and which I left behind. His attention to these details seemed unusual, but I was too emotionally devastated to analyze his behavior carefully. The climactic twist of this part was dawning on me as I prepared to leave. Derek had been intercepting my mail for months, including correspondence about scholarship opportunities. While I gathered my possessions, I realized several important letters from the University Financial Aid Office were missing from my desk. Derek had been systematically sabotaging my future while planning his own escape from whatever trouble he was really facing. 15 minutes later, I stood at our front door with my entire life compressed into 2 bags. Dad held the door open, his face stone cold and unforgiving. "When you're ready to tell the truth and return my money, you know where to find me," he said. "Dad, please don't do this. I love you and I'm telling the truth. Actions have consequences, Herbert. Maybe sleeping in the rain will teach you the value of honesty." I stepped out into the storm, and Dad immediately closed and locked the door behind me. The deadbolt sliding into place sounded like a gunshot in the darkness. Rain soaked through my jacket within seconds, and I stood there for a moment, hoping Dad might reconsider and let me back inside. Through the living room window, I could see Derek comforting Dad with what looked like a supportive hug. The sight of my brother consoling our father after destroying my life with lies felt like the final betrayal of a trust I had never thought to question. As I walked away from the only home I had ever known, I realized I had no idea where I was going, or how I would survive. At 20 years old, I was suddenly homeless, friendless, and facing an uncertain future based on accusations I couldn't disprove and a crime I hadn't committed. 2 weeks of sleeping on my college friend Jake's couch had taught me lessons about survival that no textbook could provide. Jake Williams lived in a cramped studio apartment near campus, surviving on instant ramen and energy drinks while pursuing his engineering degree. His generosity probably saved my life, but I could see the financial strain my presence created for someone already struggling to make ends meet. "You can stay as long as you need," Jake assured me for the 100th time, but I noticed him checking his bank balance more frequently and skipping meals to stretch his grocery budget. His kindness made my situation bearable, but it also intensified my guilt about being a burden on someone who had his own challenges. I picked up extra shifts at the campus bookstore, working 60-hour weeks to save money for an apartment deposit. My supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, noticed my exhausted appearance and occasional emotional breakdowns, but she kindly avoided asking personal questions while allowing me flexible scheduling around my academic commitments. Every evening, I attempted to call my parents' house, desperate to speak with my mother and explain my side of the story. But Derek consistently answered the phone, claiming Dad was too angry to talk, and Mom was always working double shifts at the hospital. Derek's voice carried artificial sympathy as he delivered these rejections. "Herbert, I wish I could help you, but Dad is really hurt by what happened," Derek would say. "Maybe if you just admitted what you did and tried to pay back the money slowly, he might consider letting you come home." "Derek, you know I didn't steal that money. Why are you continuing this lie?" "I'm not lying, Herbert. I know what I saw. I'm sorry you're going through this, but consequences are consequences." These conversations left me feeling more isolated and confused. How could my own brother maintain such an elaborate deception while watching me suffer its devastating effects? During my third week of homelessness, I decided to investigate Derek's story more thoroughly. Something about his behavior that night had nagged at me constantly, and I needed to understand what was really happening in my family. I started by visiting Derek's high school during lunch hours, hoping to gather information about his recent activities and behavior. Lincoln High School buzzed with typical teenage energy, but asking questions about Derek proved more revealing than I had anticipated. Derek Henderson asked his classmate Maria Santos when I approached her near the cafeteria. "He hasn't been in most of his classes for like 2 months. Everyone thought he dropped out or transferred schools." This information shocked me completely. Derek had been leaving the house every morning with his backpack, claiming to attend school normally. Where had he been spending those hours instead? "Do you know if Derek has been having any problems lately?" I asked Maria carefully. "Family issues, money troubles, anything like that?" Maria glanced around nervously before lowering her voice. "Look, I don't really know Derek that well, but there were rumors about him getting involved with some sketchy online gambling stuff. My friend Tyler said Derek owed money to some dangerous people. Online gambling." The pieces of a terrifying puzzle began fitting together in my mind. Derek's nervous behavior, his knowledge of our family's financial details, his desperate need to deflect blame onto someone else. It all made sense if he had been stealing money to pay gambling debts. I spent the next several days researching Derek's digital footprint using public computers at the campus library to investigate his social media accounts and online activities. What I discovered made my blood run cold with both anger and fear. Derek had been active on multiple gambling websites for over 6 months, placing bets on sports games, poker tournaments, and casino-style games. His social media posts showed a pattern of dramatic mood swing celebration after wins, followed by desperation and panic after losses. Through careful examination of his Instagram and Facebook activity, I found connections to other young gamblers who shared stories about owing money to organized gambling operations. These weren't friendly neighborhood poker games. They were serious criminal enterprises that used intimidation and violence to collect debts. The climactic twist of my investigation came when I discovered Derek's true situation. He had been forging our dad's signature on business checks to pay gambling debts for months, meaning he had stolen far more than the $3,000 he accused me of taking. A review of Dad's business banking records, which I accessed using information Derek had carelessly shared in family conversations, revealed at least $15,000 in forged checks over the past 4 months. Derek hadn't just stolen once he had been systematically draining the family business to feed his gambling addiction. But the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. Derek's gambling debts were to organized criminals who had been threatening our entire family's safety. Text messages I found through mutual friends revealed that Derek's creditors had been making explicit threats about targeting our home and business if their money wasn't repaid immediately. Derek hadn't just framed me to cover his theft, he had sacrificed me to buy time and create a scapegoat while planning his own escape from a dangerous situation that threatened everyone we loved. My expulsion from the family wasn't just cruel. It was Derek's desperate attempt to protect himself while leaving the rest of us vulnerable to criminal retaliation. As I sat in the library, staring at the evidence of my brother's betrayal and our family's danger, I realized that proving my innocence was no longer enough. I needed to save my parents from threats they didn't even know existed, and I needed to find a way to help Derek before his gambling addiction destroyed all our lives completely. The weight of this knowledge felt heavier than my homelessness had ever been. I wasn't just an innocent victim anymore. I was possibly the only person who could prevent a tragedy that Derek's lies had set in motion. Jake's beat-up Honda Civic provided perfect cover for surveillance as we parked across the street from my family home on a warm Saturday afternoon. The familiar sight of our backyard patio, where Dad often hosted friends for weekend barbecues, brought back memories of simpler times when family gatherings meant laughter and storytelling rather than accusations and exile. Dad had invited his longtime buddies Tom Rodriguez, Steve Bailey, and Frank Morrison for their monthly get-together. These men had been part of my childhood landscape for years. Tom owned the local hardware store, Steve worked as a mechanic at the Ford dealership, and Frank managed the community bank where our family had maintained accounts for decades. I could see them through the chain-link fence, sitting around our old picnic table with beer bottles and plates of grilled burgers. Dad appeared relaxed and jovial, gesturing animatedly as he told stories to his attentive audience. The normalcy of the scene made my chest tighten with longing for the family connection I had lost. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jake whispered, adjusting his rearview mirror to get a better view. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I need to know how Dad really feels about what happened. I replied, rolling down the passenger window slightly to improve our hearing. Maybe he's been having second thoughts about kicking me out. What I heard instead shattered any remaining hope I held for my father's love and understanding. "You wouldn't believe the relief I feel having that kid out of the house," Dad declared, loudly punctuating his words with hearty laughter. 20 years I spent worrying about Herbert's judgment, and he finally showed his true colors. Tom nodded sympathetically. "Gary, you did the right thing. A man's got to protect his business and his family's reputation. Can't have thieves in the house, blood relation or not." Dad took a long swig of beer before continuing his cruel commentary. "The funniest part is how Herbert acted all innocent and wounded when I confronted him. Kid's got some serious acting skills, almost had me feeling guilty for about 5 seconds. Steve chimed in with his own observation. "Young people today think they're entitled to everything without earning it. Herbert probably figured he deserved that money for college expenses." "Exactly." Dad slapped the table enthusiastically. "I offered to help pay for his education the honest way, but he decided stealing was easier. Good riddance, I say." Frank raised his bottle in a mock toast. "Here's to Derek for having the courage to expose his brother's criminal behavior. Takes character to do the right thing even when it hurts family relationships." The men clinked their bottles together while Dad beamed with pride about Derek's supposed integrity. Their casual dismissal of my character and their celebration of my exile felt like repeated stabs to my heart. "Derek's been a model son through this whole mess," Dad continued. "He's been comforting me, helping around the house, and even offered to work at the shop part-time to help replace the stolen money. Now that's the kind of son that makes a father proud." Jake grabbed my shoulder as I started to get out of the car. "Herbert, don't. This won't solve anything. But I was frozen in place by my father's next words, which revealed the true depth of his callousness. Honestly, I hope Herbert learns the hard way what life is like for people who choose crime over honest work, Dad said with chilling satisfaction. Maybe sleeping under bridges and digging through garbage cans will teach him some respect for other people's property. Tom laughed at this image. Gary, you sound almost happy that Herbert is struggling out there. I am happy, Dad admitted without shame. For years, I worried about that boy's lack of direction and motivation. Now I know he was just a lazy thief waiting for the right opportunity. Better to find out now than after I made him a partner in my business. The betrayal in those words cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced. This wasn't just a father protecting his business. This was a man who felt genuine pleasure, imagining his son's suffering and degradation. Steve offered his own cruel speculation. I bet Herbert's too proud to come crawling back and admit what he did. Kid probably thinks he can tough it out on the streets and prove some kind of point. His pride will be his downfall, Dad replied with satisfaction. I raised him to be stubborn, and now that stubbornness will teach him lessons I apparently failed to instill through proper parenting. Frank nodded sagely. Sometimes children have to hit rock bottom before they learn respect for authority and other people's rights. Dad's response made my stomach turn with revulsion. If Herbert shows up here begging for forgiveness, I'll make him grovel properly before I even consider letting him back in this house. He needs to understand that actions have permanent consequences. The climactic twist of this devastating moment came when I noticed a familiar silhouette standing in the kitchen doorway, hidden from Dad's view, but clearly visible to me across the street. My mother Carol had been listening to every word of this cruel conversation, while the men remained completely unaware of her presence. Mom's face showed a combination of shock, disgust, and growing anger as she absorbed her husband's callous laughter about their son's homelessness. Her hands gripped the doorframe so tightly that her knuckles turned white, and I could see tears streaming down her cheeks from 50 feet away. She had been working extra shifts specifically to help pay for my college expenses, believing I was guilty, but still loving me unconditionally. Hearing Gary's complete lack of concern for my well-being and his active pleasure in my suffering was clearly shattering her faith in her husband's judgment and character. Mom had always been the emotional center of our family, the person who mediated conflicts and encouraged forgiveness. Watching her discover her husband's capacity for cruelty toward their own child was breaking my heart almost as much as Dad's words themselves. After several more minutes of listening to Dad's friends praise him for his harsh treatment of me, Mom quietly retreated into the house. I could see lights turning on in different rooms as she moved through our home, and I wondered what thoughts were going through her mind as she processed this revelation about the man she had married. "We should go," Jake whispered urgently. "Your mom might see us out here." As we drove away, I realized that Mom's presence during Dad's cruel celebration might be the key to exposing Derek's lies and saving our family. If anyone had the motivation and ability to investigate the truth, it would be the woman who had just learned that her husband was celebrating their son's homelessness like it was a personal victory. The betrayal I felt from Dad's words was devastating, but the hope I felt from Mom's reaction might be enough to sustain me through whatever came next. For the first time since my expulsion, I believed that someone in my family might be willing to fight for the truth and for my innocence. Carol Henderson had always prided herself on being an observant nurse who noticed details others missed, whether reading subtle changes in a patient's condition or detecting inconsistencies in medical charts. That same analytical skill set was now focused on her own family with laser precision, and what she was discovering made her question everything she thought she knew about her younger son. The morning after overhearing Gary's cruel celebration, Carol waited until both Derek and Gary left the house before beginning her systematic investigation. Derek's casual departure for what he claimed was school immediately struck her as suspicious, given her growing doubts about his recent behavior and her husband's troubling lack of empathy. Derek's bedroom revealed secrets that made Carol's nursing training seem inadequate for processing the emotional shock of each discovery. Hidden beneath his mattress, she found 3 different smartphones devices she had never seen before, and couldn't understand why he would need multiple phones. The first phone contained gambling applications that Carol didn't recognize, DraftKings BetMGM, and several offshore betting sites with names like Lucky Bet International and Win Big Casino. The betting history showed thousands of dollars in wagers over the past 6 months with devastating losses that far exceeded any money Derek could have legitimately accessed. The second phone revealed text message conversations that made Carol's hands shake as she read them. "Derek, you owe us $18,000 now with interest. Time is running out. We know where your family works and lives. Pay up or face consequences. Your brother going to college won't matter if something happens to your parents." The third phone contained what appeared to be planning documents for some kind of business operation involving Gary's automotive shop. Derek had photographed the shop's layout, security cameras, cash storage areas, and even employee schedules. The implications made Carol feel physically sick. In Derek's desk drawer, hidden beneath school notebooks that clearly hadn't been used in months, Carol discovered a collection of forged checks bearing Gary's signature. Her nursing training had made her familiar with detecting fraudulent prescriptions, and these forgeries were obviously fake once she examined them closely. Each check was made out to different individuals and businesses, but all for amounts ranging from $500 to $2,000. The total value exceeded $15,000, representing systematic theft from their family business over several months. But the most devastating discovery came when Carol found Derek's practice sheets pages, where he had practiced forging Gary's signature until he could replicate it perfectly. Some practice sheets included notes like, "Make the G less loopy," and "Remember Dad presses harder with pens." Carol's medical training had taught her to document evidence carefully, so she photographed everything with her own phone before replacing items exactly as she had found them. Her hands trembled as she worked both from anger at Derek's betrayal and grief for the family she thought she had been protecting. The basement search revealed Derek's true plans for escape and the scope of danger facing their family. Hidden behind boxes of Christmas decorations, Carol found a duffel bag containing false identification documents, several $1,000s in cash, and detailed maps showing routes from their home to various interstate highways. Derek had been planning to disappear entirely, leaving Herbert to take permanent blame, while Derek started a new life elsewhere with stolen money. The maps included notes about which routes avoided major traffic cameras and which rest stops offered cash transactions for food and fuel. More terrifying were the printed emails between Derek and his gambling associates, which outlined a planned robbery of Gary's automotive shop. Derek had been providing inside information about cash storage alarm systems and employee schedules. The robbery was scheduled for the following weekend, when Gary typically made his largest cash deposits. The emails revealed that Derek's gambling debts had grown so large that his creditors were planning to target the family business directly, using Derek as an inside accomplice to ensure maximum success with minimum risk. Derek wasn't just a gambling addict. He had become an active participant in planning a violent crime against his own father. Carol realized that Herbert's expulsion had been strategically timed to coincide with this planned robbery. Derek needed Herbert out of the house and away from the family business, so he wouldn't accidentally interfere with the criminal operation or become a potential witness to the conspirators' identities. The climactic twist came when Carol discovered Derek's written confession, apparently drafted, but never sent, which detailed his entire deception. "I stole the money to pay gambling debts. Herbert never did anything wrong. I planted his textbook and lied about seeing him at the shop. I've been forging Dad's checks for months. The gambling people are threatening to hurt our family if I don't pay them back. I framed Herbert because I needed someone to blame, and I needed him out of the way for what comes next. I'm sorry for destroying our family, but I didn't know what else to do." The confession was dated 3 days after Herbert's expulsion, suggesting Derek had experienced guilt and considered telling the truth before ultimately deciding to continue with his deception and escape plan. Carol sat in Derek's bedroom, surrounded by evidence of her son's criminal activity and betrayal, feeling like her entire world had collapsed. The son she thought she was protecting was planning to rob his own father, while the son she believed was guilty was innocent and suffering homelessness based on elaborate lies. But Carol's nursing training had also taught her to respond to crises with decisive action rather than emotional paralysis. She immediately contacted the non-emergency police line to report the planned robbery and Derek's criminal associates. Detective Sarah Mitchell agreed to meet with Carol that afternoon to review the evidence and develop a plan to protect the family and expose the truth. As Carol prepared for her meeting with Detective Mitchell, she realized that saving her family would require confronting Derek directly and finding a way to contact Herbert before the planned robbery could take place. Her discovery had made her the only person capable of preventing a violent crime while restoring justice to her innocent older son. The weight of this knowledge felt enormous, but Carol's determination to protect both her sons, even from each other, gave her strength to face whatever confrontation lay ahead. She had spent 2 weeks believing Herbert was guilty while working extra shifts to help pay for his college expenses anyway, but now she knew the truth about who really needed saving. Detective Sarah Mitchell's 20-year career in financial crimes had prepared her for complicated family situations, but Carol Henderson's evidence package represented one of the most elaborate cases of sibling betrayal she had encountered. The detective's small office at the county courthouse felt cramped as she spread Derek's forged checks, threatening text messages, and gambling records across her desk like puzzle pieces of a criminal conspiracy. Mrs. Henderson, this evidence clearly shows systematic embezzlement and fraud. Detective Mitchell confirmed photographing each document with professional precision. Your younger son has been operating what amounts to a small criminal enterprise while framing his brother for a single theft. Carol dabbed her eyes with tissues, struggling to maintain composure while discussing her family's destruction. Detective, what I can't understand is how Derek became so skilled at deception. He's maintained these lies for weeks while watching Herbert suffer homelessness. Gambling addiction creates desperation that can transform ordinary people into sophisticated criminals. Detective Mitchell explained. Your son didn't plan to hurt his brother initially, but once the lies started, he had to keep expanding them to avoid exposure. The detective's investigation had uncovered additional details about Derek's gambling associates that made the family's danger even more serious. The criminal organization Derek owed money to specialized in targeting small businesses for robbery after recruiting inside accomplices through gambling debt leverage. These people have used similar schemes in 3 other states, Detective Mitchell revealed. They identify young gamblers with family businesses, create debt situations that require inside cooperation, then execute robberies using detailed intelligence provided by their accomplices. Carol's nursing training helped her process this information analytically rather than emotionally. So Derek isn't just a victim of gambling addiction. He's become a willing participant in organized crime. Exactly. And based on the text messages and email communications, you discovered the planned robbery of your husband's shop is scheduled for this Saturday night. We need to act quickly to protect your family and gather evidence against the entire criminal network. Detective Mitchell outlined a plan that would expose Derek's deception while protecting the family from retaliation by his criminal associates. The plan required Carol to contact Herbert secretly while maintaining normal household routines that wouldn't alert Derek to their discovery of his activities. The most important element is getting Herbert involved voluntarily, Detective Mitchell emphasized. He's the key witness to Derek's behavior patterns, and he deserves to be part of exposing the truth about his innocence. Carol agreed to arrange a clandestine meeting with Herbert at Riverside Park, a neutral location where they could speak privately without Derek's knowledge. The detective provided Carol with recording equipment to document Herbert's account of events and ensure accurate evidence for potential criminal proceedings. That evening, Carol managed to contact Herbert through his friend Jake, arranging to meet the following afternoon under the pretense of grocery shopping. Her heart ached as she imagined Herbert's confusion about receiving contact from family members who had rejected him based on lies. The next day's meeting at Riverside Park felt surreal for both mother and son. Carol arrived first, sitting on a bench near the duck pond, where she had brought Herbert and Derek for countless childhood outings. The familiar setting made the current family crisis feel even more tragic and unnecessary. Herbert approached cautiously his appearance, showing the physical toll of homelessness and stress. His clothes were clean, but worn. His face had lost weight, and his eyes carried a wariness that broke Carol's heart. Despite everything, he hugged her immediately upon approach. "Mom, I've missed you so much." Herbert said, his voice thick with emotion. "I hope you know that I would never steal from Dad or betray our family's trust." Carol began crying before she could speak. "Herbert, I believe you. I know you're innocent, and I'm so sorry for what you've been put through." She then systematically showed Herbert all the evidence she had discovered about Derek's criminal activities. Herbert's expressions changed from confusion to anger to heartbreak as he absorbed the scope of his brother's betrayal and the danger Derek had created for their entire family. "Derek has been stealing for months?" Herbert asked, examining the forged checks with disbelief. "And he's been planning to rob Dad's shop with criminals. He's been desperate and making increasingly dangerous decisions," Carol explained. "But Herbert, there's something else you need to understand. Derek's gambling associates have been threatening our family's safety. Your expulsion from the house may have actually protected you from being present during a planned violent robbery." Herbert struggled to process this information. His initial desire for revenge against Derek began transforming into concern for everyone's safety, including Derek's well-being. "Mom, what can we do to help Derek while also protecting Dad and exposing the truth?" Carol outlined Detective Mitchell's plan for Saturday evening. They would allow Derek to believe the robbery was proceeding normally, while police positioned themselves to arrest his criminal associates and gather evidence of the entire conspiracy. "Derek will have to face consequences for his actions," Carol explained. "But cooperation with police might help him receive treatment for gambling addiction rather than serious prison time." The climactic twist of their meeting came when Carol revealed the most shocking aspect of Derek's situation. His gambling associates had been surveilling the family for weeks, gathering intelligence about their routines and vulnerabilities. Derek wasn't just an accomplice, he had become an unwilling informant whose own safety depended on continuing cooperation with dangerous criminals. "These people have been watching our house dad's business, even your college campus," Carol told Herbert. "Derek's lies about you weren't just about covering theft. They were about keeping you away from criminals who might have hurt you to pressure Derek into compliance." Herbert realized that his expulsion, while devastating personally, had inadvertently protected him from being used as leverage against Derek or becoming a witness to criminal activities. Derek's deception had multiple layers of motivation beyond simple self-preservation. "I want to help save Derek and our family," Herbert declared with determination. "But I also want Dad to understand the truth about my innocence and Derek's situation." Carol smiled through her tears. Detective Mitchell has a plan for both of those goals. Saturday night will expose everything while keeping everyone safe. As they prepared to leave the park, Herbert felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety about the confrontation ahead. Proving his innocence was important, but helping his brother escape a dangerous criminal situation felt equally crucial for his family's future. The plan they had developed would require courage from everyone involved, but it offered the possibility of justice, redemption, and family healing that had seemed impossible just days before. Saturday evening arrived with unseasonably cool weather that made the Henderson family gathering feel more intimate than usual. Carol had insisted on hosting Sunday dinner a day early, claiming her work schedule required the adjustment. Derek and Gary agreed without suspicion, grateful for family time that felt increasingly precious as Derek's secret deadline approached. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china and silverware, creating an atmosphere of special occasion that masked the underlying tension of the planned confrontation. Detective Mitchell and 2 additional officers waited in unmarked vehicles outside, ready to intercede if Derek's criminal associates appeared according to their planned schedule. Herbert arrived precisely at 6 o'clock. His presence shocking Gary into momentary speechlessness. Derek's face drained of all color as he realized his carefully constructed deception was about to collapse under scrutiny. "What is he doing here?" Gary demanded, his anger immediately rekindling at the sight of his expelled son. "Herbert is here because I invited him," Carol stated firmly, her voice carrying an authority that commanded attention. "We need to have an honest conversation about what really happened to your missing money." Derek attempted to maintain his deception even as panic flickered in his eyes. "Mom, I don't think Herbert should be here. This is just going to create more family conflict." Carol moved to the center of the room, positioning herself where she could observe both Gary and Derek simultaneously. "Derek, I'm going to give you one opportunity to tell your father the truth about who really stole that money." "I already told Dad the truth," Derek replied, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried during previous confrontations. "Herbert took the money, and I saw him at the shop." Gary looked between his wife and sons, sensing undercurrents he didn't fully understand. "Carol, what's going on here? Why are you questioning Derek's testimony?" Instead of answering directly, Carol produced Derek's hidden smartphones and placed them on the dining room table. "Gary, these phones contain evidence of systematic theft from your business, but not by the son you expelled from our home." Derek lunged toward the phones, but Herbert blocked his path with surprising gentleness. "Derek, running won't help anymore. Mom knows everything, and there are police officers outside waiting to protect our family from the people who've been threatening you." "Police officers?" Gary repeated, his confusion deepening. "Carol, what is happening in this house?" Carol systematically presented evidence of Derek's criminal activities, starting with the gambling applications and progressing through the forged checks, threatening text messages, and planned robbery documentation. Each revelation hit Gary like a physical blow, transforming his anger into shock and disbelief. $18,000 in forged checks. Gary whispered, examining his own signatures that he had never written. "Derek, you've been stealing from my business for months." Derek's composure finally cracked under the weight of overwhelming evidence and his family's unified scrutiny. Tears streamed down his face as he collapsed into a dining room chair, his shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. "I never meant for any of this to happen," Derek confessed through his tears. "The gambling started as harmless fun with friends, but it became impossible to stop. When I started losing more than I could pay, These people said they would hurt all of you if I didn't cooperate. Gary's face cycled through emotions ranging from rage to heartbreak as he absorbed the scope of Derek's betrayal and Herbert's innocence. You let me kick Herbert out of our home based on lies. You watched your brother become homeless while you were the real thief. I was terrified, Derek cried out. These people have killed other families who couldn't pay gambling debts. I thought if I could make Herbert disappear temporarily and give them the robbery money, everyone would be safe. Herbert sat down beside Derek, his anger tempered by understanding of his brother's impossible situation. Derek, those people were never going to stop threatening our family. Paying them would have only made demands for more money. Carol revealed the final elements of Detective Mitchell's investigation. Derek's criminal associates had been planning to eliminate him after the robbery to avoid leaving witnesses who could testify about their operation. Derek's cooperation hadn't been buying safety. It had been ensuring his own destruction along with his family's. The planned robbery tonight was going to end with serious violence, Carol explained to Gary. Derek wasn't just stealing money, he was being used by professional criminals who view our family as expendable. Gary struggled to process the complete reversal of everything he thought he understood about his son's characters. Herbert, can you ever forgive me for not believing you? For throwing you out based on lies? Dad Derek was protecting our family the only way he knew how. Herbert replied with remarkable compassion. His methods were wrong, but his intentions came from love and fear for our safety. Detective Mitchell entered the house at that moment, having arrested Derek's criminal associates as they approached the automotive shop for their planned robbery. The detective's presence confirmed that the immediate danger had passed, and that Derek's cooperation with law enforcement would be documented favorably. Derek, your willingness to expose this criminal network will help prosecutors target the leaders who exploit young gamblers, Detective Mitchell explained. That cooperation combined with your age and lack of prior criminal history should result in treatment for gambling addiction rather than serious prison time. Gary stood up and pulled Herbert into a fierce embrace, his own tears flowing freely. Son, I failed you as a father by not investigating properly before making accusations. Can you forgive an old man's pride and poor judgment? Dad, I love you. Family mistakes can be fixed with honesty and commitment to doing better. The conversation that followed lasted several hours, with Derek explaining his gambling progression, Herbert sharing his experiences during homelessness, and Gary acknowledging his failure to protect both sons from an impossible situation. Carol facilitated discussions that helped each family member understand their role in healing relationships damaged by crisis and deception. Derek committed to intensive gambling addiction treatment and community service to make amends for his theft. Gary committed to improving communication and avoiding rushed judgments about family members. Herbert's college plans resumed with increased family support and appreciation for education as a pathway to stability and independence. His scholarship interview, which he had missed during his homelessness, was rescheduled after university officials learned about his family crisis and impressed by his resilience. Over the following months, Derek completed his high school education through an alternative program while participating in gambling addiction counseling. His relationship with Herbert strengthened as they worked together to rebuild family trust and support each other's goals. Gary expanded his automotive business with increased security measures and employee training, using his experience with financial fraud to help other small business owners protect themselves from similar crimes. His relationship with Herbert deepened through regular conversations and shared work projects that rebuilt their mutual respect. Carol continued her nursing career with renewed appreciation for family communication and early intervention in crisis situations. Her decisive investigation had not only saved her family, but provided law enforcement with evidence that dismantled an entire criminal network targeting families through gambling addiction exploitation. The family's healing process required months of honest conversations, professional counseling, and mutual forgiveness, but their bond emerged stronger than before the crisis. Derek's recovery from gambling addiction inspired him to pursue counseling education to help other young people avoid similar destructive choices. Herbert's college experience was enriched by his family's support and his own increased maturity from surviving homelessness and family betrayal. His business degree became the foundation for eventually joining Gary's automotive business as an equal partner, bringing fresh perspectives and financial management skills. The life lesson that emerged from this crisis was that family loyalty sometimes requires hard choices and honest confrontation rather than protective silence. Derek's attempt to shield his family through deception had nearly destroyed them all, while Carol's courage to investigate and expose the truth had ultimately saved everyone. Justice was served through Derek's accountability and rehabilitation rather than purely punitive measures. The criminal network that had exploited Derek was dismantled by law enforcement, preventing similar victimization of other families. Herbert's innocence was completely vindicated, and his relationship with his parents was restored on a foundation of increased trust and communication. Standing in their backyard 1 year later, watching Derek graduate from his addiction treatment program, while Herbert prepared for his final semester of college, Gary reflected on how close they had come to losing everything that truly mattered. The experience had taught them that protecting family sometimes means facing uncomfortable truths rather than accepting convenient lies. Herbert's story had transformed from one of betrayal and exile into one of resilience, forgiveness, and the power of truth to heal relationships that seem permanently damaged. His journey through homelessness and back to family acceptance had strengthened his character and deepened his appreciation for the people who truly loved him. Now, as Herbert looked toward his future with confidence restored and family bonds stronger than ever, he understood that sometimes the worst experiences in life prepare us to appreciate the best ones. His brother's lies had temporarily destroyed his security, but his mother's love and courage had ultimately restored justice and peace to their family. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust, and you had to choose between revenge and forgiveness? How did that experience change your perspective on family relationships and second chances? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this story with someone who might benefit from hearing about the power of truth and forgiveness. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us all of our capacity for resilience and redemption. Thank you for listening to Herbert's journey from betrayal to restoration. May your own family relationships be strengthened by honesty, protected by love, and enriched by the wisdom that comes from facing difficult truths together.